Welcome to another episode of the Do Good Work podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Winston Collier. Winston is an attorney, coach, and consultant, and he helps leaders and businesses across the country re-find their purpose to find joy in their work and achieve their goals. This interview is one of my favorites because we dive into subtleties that even if you are a 10-person startup or a 1,000-person operation that need to be addressed over time as employees or leaders might get disconnected or lose that initial spark of joy of why they started working in the field that they worked in. We'll dive into opening dialogues with leaders and employees in order to engage them and rekindle that flame, as well as marrying the individual stories and desires of people working in an organization to an overall sense of the company culture and to the profitability and bottom line of the company. So join us on our journey here in my discussion with Winston.
No, I think to be honest with you, I just love the fact that we get to discuss today about something that you're passionate about. I think one of the big questions, Winston, is what type of businesses and leaders do you actually work with?
Well, that's a complicated question, but it's a good one nonetheless. I'll tell you that my experience has been heavy in the healthcare space.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few reasons that's the case, and that I like working with people in the healthcare space. But I should say that it's not limited to that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that all business owners, all leaders, can benefit from sort of a deep dive into their own leadership styles, into
Mm-hmm.
their own personal development, into their own sort of values, and extract from that ways that they can be good leaders, whether that's in their personal life, whether they're the CEO of a large company, or whether they're a solopreneur. I think buried within all of us are things that was a little bit of help and with a little bit of self-work. You can really uncover a lot and make you obviously a better leader. But healthcare is my primary focus at this point.
Okay, no, that's awesome. And you mentioned a few things there. So when you're deep diving, or when leaders deep dive, right, to refine their focus, refine their leadership, or just redefine their core values, it has the premise that was either lost in the fog, forgotten, or just left behind. Have you seen trends or themes as to how or why that happens?
Man, so this is why this is an excellent podcast. And so I am fully aware that the word refined is probably not even a word.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that not only did you pluck that word from my little byline, but took the time to notice that it means exactly that. It means that, and this goes to sort of this underlying nature, or underlying values of what I'm talking about and what I do for leaders. At some point, you chose to either get into this profession or to go down this particular path. There was something about it
Mm-hmm.
that caused you to check, or that checked some boxes in your mind that caused you to want to pursue that.
Mm-hmm.
Were they the right boxes? Was that the right decision? Only time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
But to the extent that there once was a flame burning inside of you to get into a particular field, I like to rekindle that, so to speak, to figure out what it was that initially led you to pursue this particular field, and see if we can't reconnect with that. And so, honestly, that's exactly what I do on either like this large macro scale,
Mm-hmm.
with organizations. I mean, we've done it in conference summit type of settings with thousands of employees.
Wow.
And we've done it with CEOs that, like you or I have probably encountered, really struggle with burnout, or they hit sort of a crossroads in their career and kind of feel lost on which direction they want to go from there. I help tease that out a little bit.
You make it sound so simple because those are two huge Goliaths, right? Like let's look at the one. If you are a 500 or even like 1,000, you mentioned employee size company, and you rekindle the flame to the core values of why that company or why people are working for that company, it kind of stands still in regards to the values for the company itself, right? Or do you focus on the individual level as to why we're working together to achieve this certain mission for the company overall?
Right. Wonderful question. In those large settings, I do my best. And I think the reason it seems simple is because I'm just a simple fella from from Mississippi. So
well, there's elegance and simplicity. Let me tell you that.
But you touch on sort of the scaffolding of exactly what I do, and that is attempt to marry those two things. Right. At the end of the day, this is a process, and I want to be clear. I don't think that I have magic words that I take a stage or conduct a workshop, and at the end of it, I, Winston, have suddenly refound everyone's purpose for them,
Mm-hmm.
or
there's no magic formula, is what you're saying.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
But here's the empowering piece of sort of the first part of your question.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I invite each person in that room to follow me on a journey wherein they will find that out for themselves. I will help them ask the right questions. Why in the world did I decide that I wanted to be a nurse to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so maybe, and there's a point in time where they'll do maybe a little exercise on a pen and pad that I'll provide them. But I will tell you, Raul, at the end of the day, the consistency
Mm-hmm.
That you see in their answers, maybe it's always, something super broad. I've always wanted to make an impact. I've always wanted to help those in need. I've always wanted to, and as you sit there in sunny Southern California, you can imagine exactly a lot. You can imagine a lot of the answers that I get.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they looked up to someone that was in the field, but this is why I gravitate towards healthcare, is because deep within many people in that field, maybe much like your fiance,
mm-hmm.
there was a need or a desire to make the world a better place. And so that's step one. An organization, as you well know, and as your book hits on, and I think you're kind of going down the direction, like marrying sort of some of these soft metrics with some of these hard metrics. And I realize I'm fully in the soft metric world right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think on the other side of this token, the company itself as a corporate organism,
mm-hmm.
Also needs to be reminded of what its what its genetic makeup is, what its DNA is, and at the end of the day, it's a collection of its people,
mm-hmm.
right? And it is a body that functions to serve whether it's its patients or its customers, and I feel like organizations that are trying to align kind of at the corporate level, which is sort of the second part of your question,
mm-hmm.
what their culture is, I think it would do them well to connect with the reason that its workforce got in to the industry, or better yet, why they came to work for you. Because I think there's magic in there. I think once they're in tune with oh, well, Tammy wanted to be a nurse because she wants to help people. And she wanted to come to work for us because she saw us as an organization that takes that charge very seriously, right? When the leaders of an organization can kind of peel away all of the trappings of, some of the things that build up when you've just been in an organization doing things the way you do, focusing too much on metrics and certain things that are maybe a little bit more profit driven.
Yeah.
Obviously that's
It's good. Yeah. But you can lose sight. You can lose sight.
Exactly. But I think I've had good results in marrying those two. So teasing it out of every individual in there, bringing them along, but then also bringing the company along as its leaders watch the results that come from this process, and marrying them so that not only are the individuals sort of refining their purpose, showing up at work with that purpose on the top of their mind, but the organization is showing that is important to them and they're meeting them there. I always tell people, and I'm sure your fiance can relate to this, the healthcare business, and it's we hear it a lot now because of COVID and everything that's going on, but they're the front lines. And I always remind people, to you, prior to COVID, certainly, but it can be grueling. You're in your 5th year of working with sick people, and there is pressure that we need to be efficient. We need to process this many patients, and you just forget the human element of things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, don't let this patient become patient number 67 of the day. And remember that to them, they are facing probably the single most scary thing going on in their life right now, at least today. Mm-hmm. And you were drawn into this field to make a positive impact on them and on their situation. Don't forget that, and really try to treat that patient, really try to go throughout your day with that just kind of higher level awareness. And so that type of awareness, as you well know, because you're an expert in this, that's going to lead to greater customer satisfaction. Changing all 2,000 individuals with that type of simple shift can really, really move the needle from a macro kind of organization-wide level. So,
no, absolutely.
Long answer, but I'm a lawyer, so that's how it
No, I love it. And I want our listeners to pick up one subtlety that you mentioned, is that back in the organizational conversation, or the beginning of this, you discussed that it's not just companies saying, well, what's my mission? What are my values and all that? But it's saying, why did they work for us?
Yeah.
What triggered that in them, and what did we convey? And that, I think, is even more subtle, because it's like, okay, cool, you got your mission, you got your values, that's plastered on your wall. But then why did this person and that person and this person from all different demographics come work for you, and only you, right? So that's a bigger question to answer once you have the solidity of like, these are my values, these are the company mission statements, etc. And that goes even deeper.
Yeah. And I guess the next question would be, great question. Why did they come work for you? And then, are you upholding your end of the deal? Yeah. Right? So there was something about you that drew them in. And we have to assume that it was something, people don't come to work for you because you're horrible. There's something about you that they find inspiring or compassionate. Are you doing right by them, as we say in the South? But, are you upholding your end of that, or have you strayed away? And it's crazy, man. I mean, I know that you know this quite well, but it is so easy for organizations as they sort of balance these soft metrics, or these people
human driven
with,
yeah,
the profit side of things. And look, there's a large healthcare establishment in this area that says kind of no money, no mission. So like money is very important. If you're not efficient, especially in the healthcare space where things are getting trimmed everywhere, you won't be around to have the impact that you wanted. And so it is so easy, and I see it for a lot of wonderful business minds in the healthcare executive space. It is so easy to become so focused on those metrics, on number of encounters per day, reimbursement levels, that it is so easy to forget why people came to work for you, what was motivating them to want to be a part of your team. And the beauty of it is they're not diametrically opposed. You can do both. You can do both. It actually works quite well when you do both, because then you're providing excellent care, you're making an impact, and make sure your efficiencies are there, but you can efficiently change the world. You can efficiently have an awesome business. Obviously, your book speaks to that.
No, and I love that, because
helping companies rediscover that.
Yeah, and we'll dive more into that. But as a pause here, like even if you run an e-commerce store, or if you run a service-based business, right? Like, how are you treating your customers differently than, let's say, your competitors? Why do they come to purchase from you? What feeling do that you ignite to them? And then looking at your internal team, like, why will your operations manager stick around in the next 3 years? Why you? Why not work for a competitor? Or if you're in a high growth, high stress startup area, like I know in Silicon Valley that there's a lot of hopping between developers because companies don't treat them right, or they might offer less compensation or whatever it be. Like, how are you marrying and solidifying not only the goals, but also that feeling, that ignition of reconnecting the person to their purpose, as well as your customers to be part of that mission, almost like contributing to that mission by purchasing from you or from doing business with you?
Absolutely. And, I think now is the perfect time for businesses to be asking themselves those questions. And I'm sure you've seen the studies, but look, millennials are motivated by different things than the baby boomers were, right? Baby boomers might have not hopped as much, even if they were not quite fulfilled, because it was a paycheck and you were supposed to stick with things, and money was king. And so you would tolerate not being fulfilled or becoming burnout because your first mission was to, like, I don't know, the old put food on the table, that type of mentality. And I'm certainly not knocking that. But the reason I think now is the time for businesses to be looking at this, because studies show millennials are motivated by far different things. And, I think that they will stick with you instead of hopping to another opportunity for more money if they feel heard, if they feel valued, if they feel that they are making an impact. And I have to work with leaders a lot on that. I do work for a real estate company that has had tremendous growth by being authentic in their marketing, doing things a little bit more cutting edge and innovatively from a marketing standpoint. But what they do so well, and the reason they've grown from like 3 agents to 80 agents, is because their leaders are fully aware and in touch with the exact thing you're talking about. The way that they retain their good agents is by making them feel valued, is by providing a lot of these soft skills, and so their workforce, the agents, when you see them out in town showing a house, dealing with customers, it's almost like they're emitting some type of glow, because they're in alignment with, like, it all just kind of flows, right? They're in alignment with what their company is known to stand for. Their leader is caring about them, complimenting them. It's just, it's all working well.
Yeah.
And you see it in the bottom line too.
Yeah, but that's the forefront, but that's also the back end as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Now, I've heard that as well. I've heard, connecting with your goals, connecting with your team's goals. And I think a lot of leaders have heard that, but it's a customized solution per business, obviously. But how do you get those initial dialogues started? Because I know, and I can clearly see a lot of companies missing the mark on this. Even if they
Yeah.
say they're doing it, they're not doing it. But how do you properly start that kind of dialogue and thinking to actually have some sort of result that resembles that?
That's a great question, because I know a lot of leaders that will give this process or this concept lip service.
Mm-hmm.
But like all of us, when you start pushing around on the sore spots, or start at the pain points, they don't necessarily want to engage in the process of laying it all bare. And I understand that.
Yeah.
We're all sensitive to our weaknesses, and I think you have to be careful, especially with CEOs, that they don't feel like you've just been brought in to sort of diagnose all of their ailments,
Yeah.
and then leave. And so I think you highlight what is an impediment that has to be dealt with. I think different folks have different ways of doing it. One of the skill sets that I've had, and I don't have many of them, but one of them that I've had is this ability to sort of disarm people. And I think as a public speaker, sometimes you do that by showing your vulnerabilities, right? I don't have all the answers, but I'm here to facilitate this discussion. I will show you examples of how it's worked in the past. But it is amazing, Raul. If I can find one or two people, even in a large organization, to buy in, to share their story, to participate in the workshop, it's almost like there's this collective kind of herd mentality that once I can get 2 or 3 people to hop on, sometimes I use Southern humor or charm or disarming, and I really try to create a safe space, even in an auditorium, no kidding, of 1,500 folks.
Oh, wow.
And if I can get that CEO or CFO to sort of be vulnerable with me, I've just it's worked, where they'll then take action on it. But man, you hit on a good point. My biggest fear as I take on a new client is that it's nothing more than same old tired cliches. Right?
Yeah.
And that's really where I try to distinguish myself from a lot of kind of consultants that do this. I mean, if you're bringing me in to do it, on the front end, I need to know that we're going to get real, right? That we're committed to helping this company, to helping our people, and to helping our customers or patients. And so this is not a lip service deal. Otherwise, I'm busy enough to where I don't want to waste my time with people that aren't, and companies
that aren't serious about it. And
So
I
this
love that you call it lip service, because it really comes down to that's what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm sure you run across a lot of businesses that talk a good game and probably, genuinely would like to see these changes, but aren't willing to get uncomfortable enough as a leader.
There's no backbone into it. There's no backbone.
Yeah. And so what can we do? Sometimes you don't just come in, what is the saying, when all you got's a hammer, everything's a nail. Sometimes you don't just come in whacking away with a hammer. Sometimes I like beforehand to spend a little time with that CEO, with people to try to get a lay of the land, and
and I'm sure, and I'm sure you've heard thousands of stories. What are some of the things or key things that you look for in those stories? Like how do you distinguish something that's key, valuable information as opposed to something that's just being said and may not be as helpful to really develop a transformation within the
Yeah.
organization.
So I think that probably comes with a little bit of practice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you hit on a really good nuance, because a lot of people talk a good game. In my experience, stories are powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent in my kind of workshop work,
Mm-hmm.
I usually find a story. And being a litigator and having to litigate in front of juries, you develop sort of this sixth sense about what moves people to actions. And you learn that it's oftentimes stories that show a purpose greater than oneself. So, you know, oftentimes it's stories and why I chose this. Oftentimes it's, you know, there have been stories where, you know, an employee of an organization has lost a child, and this organization really provided a tremendous amount of support for this employee during just the most awful, tragic scenario. I think highlighting those, not in a usury type of way, but to remind everyone that this organization is not just like every other one. It's one that's got trappings of family to it. And so I think just kind of throughout the course of working with them prior to the workshop, but I'm really trying to draw out stories that leaders are going to connect with, and that are always invoking that higher calling, that higher passion that originally led us to this business, which kind of brings us full circle.
I love that.
To that refinding your purpose, you know.
And not only do you intake those stories, because that's one part, but then to actually have the transformation, there has to be a story coming out and crafting a new story, right?
Exactly. And so I'll bring those stories in, and if I'm in a public speaking scenario, if with permission, I'll bring that person on stage if they're comfortable.
Oh, you'll use the real examples and like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. Wow.
Yes. And then on the outward facing portion of that story, and obviously that's with their permission, I then pose the question to the leaders, you know, this is what we did as an organization for this person, and this is how appreciative she is for us being there in that time of need. This is what we're about internally. Do our customers know that? Do they know that this is our DNA? And if not, why not?
Yeah.
Do all of our employees feel that this is who we are? If not, why not? What can we do to make sure that they're reminded daily? You know? And so then we sort of reverse engineer from these stories. There are probably better, more efficient tactics. Having a background in litigation, that's the tactic I'm most comfortable with, because I've seen it move juries and I've seen it work in impactful ways. So
and I think, I mean, to be honest with you, that's the actual difficult part, is not only extracting the valuable, conveying it, but now the next part, when it comes to the branding or the messaging or the customer facing and the protocols, that is, I wouldn't say it's easier, but it's certainly not as difficult as it is to get the original story, the original why out of an entire organization, be it 1, 2, 10 people or 10,000, right?
Yeah, you're right. You say that. To me, it's always been easier for me because of my skill set, to get these stories. I struggle a little bit, and oftentimes call in experts like some of our mutual friends to help me then tell that message to other people,
so that they can feel that same spark.
Yeah, and just to make sure it's packaged right from like a branding and an outward facing to our customers or to our patients. I'm helpful in developing it. I'm helpful in extracting it. I'm helpful getting it all buttoned up.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I need reinforcements to then best help the organization
To deploy
go yell it from the proverbial mountain and then convert it into profits, you know? So I could see me packaging something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then bringing in someone like yourself to get maybe some of the systems ironed out, some of the metrics ironed out. How are we then converting this over into our harder metrics? You know, how do we? I'm really good at that, at the soft stuff.
Yeah.
If I'm not too old to learn, if I'm not too old to stop improving,
Certainly not.
hey, man, I'll be 40 next year. I would like to get better at assisting my clients and then pushing out all the wonderful work we've done, pushing it out to our customers, to our
Effectively
patients.
and consistently. Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hit on something that is easily said, extremely difficult done, like marrying the soft, but truly marrying the soft to the hard, marrying the person to the business, marrying the reason why and the purpose, the flame, the kindle to the actual business model, and having that work successfully. And I say successfully because I mean, a lot of businesses can work without one or the other, right? But they're not as impactful as the two combined.
No, you bring up a good point, because oftentimes I will have organizations say, like, we get what you're doing here, and yes, we struggle with high turnover, and yes, morale's low, but geez, have you seen our balance sheet? We had our best month ever last month.
The worst fallacy I've ever seen. I know people assume just because you're successful that you're doing something right.
I need to say, you need to hit up my boy Raul, man. That's because, you know, I always say, yeah, but just think about how good last month could have been if you were doing both well, right? If you were marrying them. But now I'm just going to be like, hit up Raul. He'll tell you that's stupid.
It definitely takes, I think it takes also, like, in the organization, some sort of level of maturity, not in regards to age, but in, I think, like, business maturity.
Yeah.
Understand why it's important, because if that's not understood, then it's going to be easily missed.
Yeah.
No. Well, Winston, I absolutely loved our conversation today. I think we can go on for a couple more hours, but I have one final question for you. I'm really interested in see what you think, because you help so many organizations and people do this. But in your view, your definition, and it can be personal or it can be when you're working with clients, but what is your view or definition of purpose?
Ooh, now that's a heavy question. You know, I think purpose is that thing within us all, that when we have found it, we are in love with the process that comes with it. So I think your purpose may be different than mine, which may be different from the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
But once you found that purpose, you know that even the challenges that come along with achieving your purpose, the challenges, the drudgery that's going to come with anything, you actually enjoy that. You actually love that. Even if it's not fun, you love that, because you know you're in your jet stream. You know you're pursuing your purpose. My purpose happens to be impacting others, right? Giving a voice to those that don't have it, helping other people be the best that they can be, whether it's personally or professionally, for whatever reason. Like, even when they're being knuckleheads, right? Even when they don't want to listen to what I'm saying, even when I'm frustrated, I'm loving the process, because at the end of the day, I'm in harmony with my purpose, which is based on helping them. I know that's probably a squishy answer, but whatever your purpose is, you'll know it because you won't mind putting in the work to get there.
Exactly. And I love how you mentioned the part of the process, because yeah, okay, you got it, great. But let's go a mile with that purpose. Let's go 10 years with that
Yeah.
purpose. And it's being okay, like, you know what? I'm okay. Or like, for example, me, I'm getting married. Like, I will do life with you. Right. I'm okay with going through this, even the ups and downs. I don't know what they are right now. I know they're coming. Nothing good ever comes easy.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's being okay with, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you marry that with business, but also with rekindling that initial, finding that initial purpose in the 10 years, in the 20 years, in the 10,000th mile, whatever it may be for individuals or businesses. I think that's very powerful. So Winston, thank you so much for being on today.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome, man.
Thank you for joining us today on this journey with Winston on the Do Good Work podcast. I'll have Winston's contact information here in the show notes so you can reach out to Winston over LinkedIn. For this episode and more, head over to dogoodwork.io/podcast. And there you'll be able to connect and get more resources in order to help you scale your impact. This is Raul Hernandez. Do Good Work.